This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you an exclusive interview with Smriti Zubin Irani, Cabinet Minister of Women and Child Development, on achievements and various initiatives of the government for the welfare of women and children. The interviewer is Sonu Sood, AIR correspondent.
Honorable Minister, how do you look at the performance of your ministry in the year 2021?
No ministry in the Modi government works in isolation. We work as a cohesive team that complements each other's journey, each other's inputs. And as Minister of Women and Child Development, I'm particularly elated that every department of the Modi government is dedicated to the cause of women and children. Particularly women have been central to the government's efforts, as has been seen since 2014. We have seen that the Mudra Yojana, though not gender skewed, has over 70% beneficiaries that are women. We have seen that due to the efforts of Jan Dhan Yojana, we today have close to 70% women having a savings bank account, which was an abysmal 28% before the Modi government came into power in 2014. The fact that 10 crore toilets have been built, these are the 10 crore women that were bereft of toilets before 2014. The fact that Ayushman Bharat Yojana provides protection and medical cover to over 10 crore women and girls, I think is a blessing, especially given that women in the poorest of the poor families need access to affordable health care, which has now been made possible due to the Ayushman Bharat Yojana. In terms of manufacturing, in terms of enterprise, women have led from the forefront. India saw the rise of Indian women in Indian banking sector. But today, with a lady like Tessie Thomas leading efforts at DRDO, with a finance minister who is a woman, with Permanent Commission for Women in the Armed Forces, there isn't a field which is devoid of female leadership. So I think in totality, if you look at how the cause of women and particularly children has been served, it is not my service alone. It is that of the government as a whole.
Ma'am, the Bill on Prohibition of Child Marriage Amendment Act 2021 was introduced in the Lok Sabha on 21st December. How were you able to muster the support? Can you tell us how increasing the minimum age of marriage for women from 18 years to 21 years will benefit women?
If you look at the National Family Health Survey, you find between the ages of 15 and 18, we've had pregnancies up to the limit of 7%. We have seen that those women who've been surveyed at the age of 23, 24, they have said that around 23% of them were married below the age of 18. It is a challenge, especially when it comes to maternal health and child health. Malnutrition is an intergenerational challenge. It does not emanate only with the birth of a child. It emanates from the whole life cycle of a young girl, of a woman. And I think that today when more and more families support the cause of education for young girls, support the cause of ensuring that they become a part of our labor force and productive participation in the economy, one needs to recognize that men and women in this 75th year of independence, as we celebrate Amrit Mahotsav, need to have equal rights when they enter into matrimony. The fact that you have a disparity in ages of choice of marriage, I think smacks of a revulsion of the Constitution. So if you hold the constitutional rights of women to be that of equal to men, then at par women and men shall enter into matrimony at the age of 21. That has been the desire of this government. And I think one needs to also say that right of equality should not be denied to women from particular communities or religious backgrounds or caste or creeds. And that is why when we presented the bill in Parliament, we said as a government that this needs to be ensured to all women across all religions, all communities, all castes and all creeds.
Ma'am, COVID pandemic cast its shadow on women and children. What measures were taken to take care of their needs, especially for orphan children who lost their parents in the pandemic?
The Prime Minister has been more than kind to extend a helping hand to children who have been orphaned. And that is why the PM Cares Fund for COVID orphans was pronounced. We ensured that as a hallmark of cooperative federalism that has been pronounced by the Honourable Prime Minister, we have participative inputs from every district magistrate, from every state government with regards to the facilitation that needs to be given to such a child. So be it academic support or monetary support as has been announced under the PM Cares Fund for orphans, we have ensured that there is also a digital platform for a daily interface with local administration with regards to protection of such children. You must recognize that when the original lockdown was announced across the country, there were 2-3 major decisions taken. One was that all women helpline across the country will be functional 24/7. The other was at one-stop service centers, which protect women against violence and help amalgamate police, legal and medical services for women across the country in over 700 districts, were operational 24/7. We also ensured that women's shelter homes, women working hostels, childcare institutions have adequate support from the local administration and especially the police and the medical community. I must also say here that while we're talking about protection of women during the pandemic, one also must pay homage and a salutation to the female frontline workers during this entire pandemic. And I think that their contribution needs to be recognized time and again. We've had Anganwadi workers who have gone to the doorstep of every child and female beneficiary and given them the additional ration support that was needed. The take-home ration was delivered to every doorstep of close to 9 crore beneficiaries every 15 days. We had Asha workers and Anganwadi workers partner and they went house to house to do surveys for the pandemic. So I think that the pandemic also became an opportunity to recognize the prowess of Indian women. Now, I remember in 2014 when Jan Dhan accounts were opened, there were many opposition parties that said, what is the need for such a bank account? And I think that the pandemic, in fact, re-established, or for that matter, established permanently, how efficient this entire banking service was for Indian women. We have to also salute, I think, the contribution of the bank sakhis. There was minimal movement to banking institutions and the brick and mortar institutions. And we had bank sakhis go to the doorsteps of every village to ensure that digital transactions were facilitated. I also feel that a compliment needs to be given to the PM Disha program, which spoke about digital literacy and especially for women.
Ma'am, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao is a flagship scheme of your government directed at welfare of daughters. To what extent has this scheme made an impact in improving the lot of the girl child?
I think that when you look at the child sex ratio, that is a given indication of the success of this program of the Honorable Prime Minister. But I think that one of the greatest indication of how this has become a social cause, any Indian who walks out right now, let's say on a busy Indian street, or would take to a highway, can see behind many vehicles, people, they themselves individually now pronounce the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao campaign. And I think that with the evolution of the Gender Inclusion Fund in the National Education Policy, the Prime Minister has decidedly also, I think, signified that ab waqt aaya ki beti ko badhao bhi.
And that adoption not only completes a family but also provides a home to an orphaned or abandoned child. What are the steps taken by your ministry to simplify the procedure of adoption?
We have looked at the challenges that CARA has faced, given that the system of functioning was extremely dependent on the courts of India. Given the backlog of such cases and resolutions that parents sought, we introduced an amendment to the JJ Act, and rules complementing the same will be now brought to the public domain in the next 10 days. We have been sensitive to the needs not only of children but also adopting parents. But one needs to recognize that a child getting integrated to a new family, especially a child who might have been traumatized or a child who has possibly needed some help to come to that part in their lives where they get integrated to a new environment, there has to be due diligence that needs to be undertaken. There has to be adequate support with regards to mental health. There needs to be adequate counseling for the expectant family, because it's a huge life-altering decision not only for the child but also the parents and especially the family, which will see this new human being coming into their entire ecosystem. And with the next 10 days of pronouncements of the new JJ rules, we will see that a lot of systemic challenges and red tape that was dragging down the process can now be rectified. We are also in a process now with the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, with NALSA and with BPRND going to undertake in the next 1 month an engagement across all districts with district magistrates and police officials to ensure that there's an understanding of the JJ rules.
In this context, can you tell us something about the Childline initiative?
Well, the Childline initiative currently is in a process of transition. When I took office, there was a system where if a child calls, there was first a call which switches over to an NGO, and then the NGO would forward it, let's say, to the police or to a counsellor. My opinion has been, and that of the stakeholders, that when a child calls a helpline, their first desire is to contact either a counsellor directly or to the police directly. And that is why we have been productively working with the Ministry of Home Affairs and NIMHANS, which is one of the premier mental health institutions in the country, to ensure that if a child calls, we can have the adequate protocol that kicks in immediately instead of delaying solutions to a child. So 1098 is very much functional, but it's in a process of transition.
Ma'am, nutrition is a basic need of any human being. What all steps have been taken by your ministry to promote nutrition among women and children of the economically weaker sections of the society? Can you please shed some light on the progress under the Poshan Abhiyan?
We have for the first time amalgamated technology and the ground force with regards to nutrition and brought it together on one platform under the Poshan Tracker. We deployed the tracker, which is a technological platform, last March. And in just 3 months, we had over 7 crore beneficiaries tracked every day. Today, it's a robust system that tracks beneficiaries across all states of the country, a first in independent India, with 9 crore beneficiaries, whether they've received their services or not. It helps Anganwadi workers, in fact, with the help of technology, itemize where all the services in terms of gaps need to be ascertained or need to be provided. It helps district and state administration to ensure that a check can be kept so that there is absolutely no gap through which a beneficiary falls. We have for the first time last January on the 13th pronounced a guideline, which is an administrative framework for nutrition. Never before was administrative structure available for monitoring and implementation of the nutrition program in the history of our country, which emanated from the district and went right up to the cabinet secretariat. We have, with the blessings of the Prime Minister's office, ensured that such a structure now has set in and is implementable.
Ma'am, your ministry in 2021 has organized several conferences and programs like Poshan Pakhwada, Rashtriya Poshan Ma, National Conference on Women Winning Against TB. Do you feel that these events are instrumental in sensitizing people and creating awareness about key issues that need focused attention and action from all stakeholders?
Absolutely. I think that there are many facets of development or many facets of challenges that need to be addressed from a female perspective. Let's say, for the matter that you speak of, the TB conference, for the Honorable Vice President of India to come and bless us with his support for women and children who are fighting TB, brought much needed attention to the fact that there is a social stigma that is attached especially to a woman who suffers from TB. We had 2 survivors who came on the conference and in front of the Honorable Vice President spoke about the societal challenge, this challenge of stigmatization, which TB brought to a young girl and to a widow. And I think that it is essential that this year not only is marked by more such participated commentary, or for that matter conferences or debates or deliberations, we in the ministry are also keen to ensure that we now, with the help of academia, kickstart new projects on research. And I'm hopeful that the hallmark of the fulcrum of this year will be enabling more and more research on issues related to women and children.
Ma'am, ensuring safety and security of women is a matter of great concern, and very often women suffer physical abuse inside their own homes. Can you tell us more about the initiatives taken to prevent crimes against women and provide support and succor to women suffering domestic violence?
I think one needs to recognize that the question that you have brought forth itself highlights the challenge. That while infrastructurally you can provide under the Nirbhaya Fund Women's Help Desk, which we have done so across all police stations in the country, while you can provide for more forensic labs and more forensic kits, while we do ensure that infrastructure for women's shelter homes is strengthened, working women's hostels are more functionally effective for women, while we are looking towards providing more and more creches for working women, while we are looking at ensuring that administratively we look at young girls so that they are not victimized through means of violence, while we are looking at providing more and more opportunity for girls to get educated. Significantly, your question, I think, highlights one of the biggest banes in our society. How do you protect a woman from her own loved ones in her own home? And I think apart from the fact that we have helplines that are functional, apart from the fact that under NIMHANS we've provided counseling, there needs to be a societal understanding that change has to also begin from communities and families. So through you, I would today appeal to communities, to neighborhoods, to families. If you know of violence that has been brought upon on a woman by a loved one, then that needs to be reported. That woman needs protection and counseling. The government and administration is a phone call away.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this invigorating and inspiring discussion.
Thank you.
You were listening to an exclusive interview with Smriti Zubin Irani, Cabinet Minister of Women and Child Development, on achievements and various initiatives of the government for the welfare of women and children. The interviewer was Sonu Sood, AIR correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio.